It is 2 o'clock Eastern time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you had a wonderful holiday season. We are thrilled to be kicking off the new year with this exciting program and partnership with the Wells Fargo Foundation. The purpose of this webinar is to provide an overview of the Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge, which will be officially launching next Wednesday, January 15th, with the release of the first round RFP. A housekeeping announcement before we get started with our presentation. We will be answering your questions in the last 20 to 30 minutes of this webinar. Because we have a lot of people attending today and we want to minimize their background noise, everyone will remain on mute for the duration of this webinar. We'll be taking questions in the Q&A feature of Zoom, so please go ahead and feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A at the bottom right of your Zoom window at any time during this webinar. We probably won't be able to get to every question, but we'll pick out the questions that we know others will be curious to hear as well and get through as many as possible. After the webinar, we'll use these questions to update our frequently asked questions page on our website, which we'll do prior to the RFP release on January 15th. If we don't get to your question today and it's not reflected on our website, please feel free to submit any questions or comments to housingbreakthrough@enterprisecommunity.org. I'd like to now introduce Melinda Pollock, who will be walking through today's agenda.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you all for joining us today as we share more about this opportunity. In this webinar, we'll start by providing some context on the Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge. We'll introduce the team leading the challenge and share some background on our respective organizations. We'll review the goals of the challenge and then dive into the process, timeline, and eligibility parameters of the challenge. We'll provide some suggested next steps for interested applicants. And finally, we will leave time to answer questions. President of National Initiatives at Enterprise Community Partners. Joining me is Christy Smith, Senior Program Director of National Initiatives, who's overseeing the Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge. You'll be hearing more from her in a bit. For now, it's my pleasure to introduce my colleagues at the Wells Fargo Foundation, Connie Wright and Ramsey Huntley.
Melinda, thank you very much for that brief introduction, and welcome to everyone. My name is Connie Wright, Senior Vice President for the Housing Affordability Philanthropy Team for the Wells Fargo Foundation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ramsey Huntley. I'm Vice President for Clean Technology and Innovation Philanthropy here at Wells Fargo, where I'm a member of the Sustainability and Corporate Responsibility team. Thank you very much for your interest in the challenge today.
Connie, Ramsey, and I are spearheading this challenge on behalf of our organizations. As you can imagine, though, it takes a village to launch an opportunity like this, and we have many other colleagues who have and will continue to work on the challenge, including Christy, who's the day-to-day manager of the challenge at Enterprise. Enterprise Community Partners was selected by the Wells Fargo Foundation to serve as the administrator for this challenge. And we're thrilled at the opportunity to leverage our expertise in affordable housing and program management for this effort. The need for well-designed homes made affordable in cities, suburbs, and rural communities nationwide continues to exceed the supply. Our mission and vision reflect our conviction to ensure that all communities offer well-designed homes made affordable and an equal opportunity to realize their fullest potential. How do we do that? Through the combined strength of creative capital, innovative programs, and effective policy advocacy. Our founder was a renowned developer who believed in possibilities. He achieved fame, even landing on the cover of Time magazine, for turning grit and rubble into magical gathering hubs. Places like South Street Seaport, Faneuil Hall in Boston, and the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. These venues became economic engines for struggling cities. Jim's work and passion took him across the country, where he saw people and communities caught in generational poverty and unhealthy conditions. His life's work became fighting poverty by ensuring every family access to housing that they would be proud to call home in a community where they could thrive. Jim, together with his wife Patty, launched Enterprise in 1982. More than 35 years later, we continue to lead with his boundless drive to ensure all communities are good places to live, work, and play. Enterprise was particularly enthusiastic about this opportunity because it aligned with our values, experience, and the impact that motivates our work. We're housing experts, but we define our work in terms of opportunity. Through capital investments, policy advocacy, and programmatic solutions, we seek better opportunities for families and communities to thrive. We're experienced grant and program administrators. We're trusted by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, for example, to annually administer Section 4 capacity building grants. And we've distributed more than $125 million to over 1,000 community-based organizations across the country over time. And finally, Enterprise is an organization with national reach and scale. In 2018, we supported nearly 56,000 homes and 287 commercial properties in over 450 cities through our capital investments. In addition to our headquarters in Columbia, Maryland, we have 12 local market offices where we do program, policy, and capital work across the country. Connie, would you like to share a bit more about the Wells Fargo Foundation and its connection to housing affordability?
Yes, Melinda, thank you. I'm happy to do that. Let me begin by saying that we are thrilled to be on this call today and in collaboration with Enterprise. Excited to be able to support work throughout the country as it relates to innovation as it connects to housing affordability. We at Wells Fargo want to combine our business expertise and our philanthropy, including the Wells Fargo Foundation, to pave a path to stability and financial success for underserved communities. We'll focus on 3 pressing societal issues. 1 being housing affordability, secondly, financial health, and 3rd, small business growth. By focusing on these areas, we can make progress toward the disparities that are preventing millions of low and moderate income Americans from reaching their full potential. We're starting with housing affordability first. We are committing $1 billion in philanthropy alone through 2025 and working with leaders at the local and national levels like those of you on the call to address challenges of the U.S. housing affordability crisis. By the end of this year, we will also put in place a strategic approach to address small business growth and financial health. Small businesses are vital to local job creation, and we intend to ramp up our efforts around greater access to capital and technical assistance. We also will look to focus on financial health and recognize it as a key to families and communities building wealth. So we will intensify our efforts around financial education, coaching, and other tools and resources. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Ramsey to talk more specifically about why we're on the call today. Ramsey?
Thank you, Connie. So when we think about the housing affordability pillar that Connie just highlighted, our plan is to collaborate with community stakeholders like yourselves to address systematic housing challenges and develop innovative, scalable national and local solutions. We also plan to lead dialogue around housing issues to help shift the narrative and bring forward innovative and scalable solutions. We aim to educate stakeholders and positively create action around housing issues, and as it relates to today, implement a $20 million housing innovation challenge to bring forward new housing affordability areas, or ideas, I should say, in the areas of finance, construction, and residential support services. You're going to hear a lot more about that on the call. So as you can imagine, we're thrilled to be launching this challenge. We can't wait to see the innovative breakthrough ideas you all have been working on for so long, and look forward to you bringing them forward as part of this conversation.
Super. Thank you, Connie and Ramsey. Connie, were you trying to jump in there? Are we okay? Great, I'll keep going. So let's take a minute to provide some context for why the Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge will be such an important tool in supporting innovative solutions. At Enterprise, one way we understand the issue of housing affordability is by looking at the number of people who pay more than half of their income on housing costs. That number, which we name as housing insecure households, was 18 million in 2018. And we can break that 18 million down further by renter or owner households to better understand the problem. Homelessness is another important important data point, and we know that in 2018, there were approximately 553,000 individuals who were experiencing homelessness. While these numbers are disheartening, alarming, and unacceptable, it's important to keep in mind that this is a solvable problem. And as this slide shows, these numbers have actually decreased a bit since 2012. At Enterprise, we know we cannot solve housing insecurity and improve housing affordability without addressing and understanding racial equity. This is one of many ways to illustrate that people of color are disparately impacted by housing insecurity. Put more precisely, Black households are twice as likely to experience housing insecurity in the US. On today's webinar, we will not explore all the root causes of housing insecurity and why the housing landscape looks as it does, but included among them are many decades of racially discriminatory policies in both the public and private sectors that put home ownership out of reach for African American households, that have dismantled Black-owned small businesses, and put undue pressure on rental housing stock in predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods. In recent years, we've come to more deeply understand that income inequality is another root cause of housing insecurity. When your wages are 5% more than they were last year, but your housing costs are 16% more than they were last year, for example, it's easy to see why so many people struggle with housing affordability in the US. Recent data also tells us that housing construction, this slide is focused on the number of multifamily completions are less than half of what they were in the early 1970s. While trending up since the Great Recession, these systemic cost challenges continue to leave supply of affordable rental housing well below current demands. And finally, the Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge is national in scope because we know that housing affordability looks different in rural communities, tribal communities, cities, and suburbs. The issue is complex, and we know that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. We can all agree that there's a significant need to create new solutions that address housing affordability. Let's now get into the nuts and bolts of the challenge. Here are the goals guiding this effort. First, we want to identify, accelerate, and scale promising ideas, models, and approaches to solving housing affordability issues. Second, we hope to provide peer-to-peer learning and networking opportunities over the course of the program. Third, we want to disseminate ideas and models that engage a wider audience of stakeholders in the search for housing affordability innovations. As you may have noted in our announcement materials, there are 3 distinct focus areas of the challenge: financing, construction, and resident services and support. These 3 opportunity statements, which correspond to financing, construction, and resident services and support, are really the 3 pillars of the challenge. In the financing focus area, our opportunity statement is: how might we improve how affordable housing is financed by managing risk differently, increasing efficiency, or identifying scalable below market sources of financing? In the construction focus area, our opportunity statement is: how might we lower costs and expedite the design and construction process so that more people can benefit from housing that is affordable, healthy, and climate resilient? In the resident service and support focus area, our opportunity statement is: how might we improve housing stability and promote personal agency through resident services and support so that individuals and families can thrive in their communities? These 3 opportunity statements should guide you to the area that your breakthrough idea or innovation best aligns with. Keep in mind, you'll be applying to only one focus area. When the RFP is released, you'll also see that in addition to ideas that address these opportunity statements, we're also looking for breakthrough ideas that address racial disparities in housing affordability and promote racial equity. And we're looking for innovations that use green building strategies, healthy building practices, and/or incorporate climate resilience. To a lesser degree, but still noteworthy, the RFP asks about the use of technology and involving any creative partnerships. To be clear, these sub-criteria are not required, but ideas that do address these sub-criteria will be rewarded with additional points in the scoring criteria. I'll now turn it over to Christy, who will explain more about what to expect during this application process.
Thanks so much, Melinda, and thanks again to everyone participating in today's webinar. There's quite a few of you. In terms of process and timeline, the application and selection process for the challenge will have 3 rounds. Why? Because we're anticipating a large response to the challenge, and we believe having 3 stages will help us diligently and thoughtfully narrow to 6 winning applications. We also want to minimize the burden on applicants at the outset. So rather than asking for a detailed and intensive proposal from all applicants in the first round, we will start with a relatively short application in round 1, and the applicants chosen to move forward will be required to provide more detail and documentation in rounds 2 and 3. We will select roughly 40 applicants to move from round 1 to round 2, and we will select 15 applicants to move from round 2 to round 3. Ultimately, we will choose 6 winners. On January 15th, the round 1 RFP will be released, and applicants will have until February 19th to apply to the challenge. On or before March 17th, round 1 applicants will be notified if they have been selected to move forward to round 2. For the roughly 40 applicants selected to move forward, the round 2 application will be released on March 18th, and applicants will have until April 14th to apply. On or before May 21st, round 2 applicants will be notified if they've been selected to move forward to round 3. Round 3 of the competition will include a pitch day, where applicants will prepare a short presentation of their breakthrough idea to a selection committee. For the 15 applicants moving forward to this round, preparation will begin on May 26th, and applicants will participate in pitch day in late June. The final winners of the challenge will be announced on or before July 31st. What can applicants expect if you decide to apply? You can expect, as I mentioned a moment ago, a relatively brief application for round 1. We've estimated about 3 to 4 hours needed to respond to the question prompts and compile the relevant documentation to submit with your application. You can also expect to apply through an online platform called SlideRoom. You'll find the portal to the application on the Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge website, which is launching on January 15th in conjunction with the RFP. You'll need to create a SlideRoom account by providing your email and creating a password if you do not already have an account. You can expect to receive email notifications regarding your application status from SlideRoom throughout the application process. We are hosting a second webinar on January 16th, one day after the RFP is released, to walk interested applicants through the mechanics of the application process and provide more specific instructions on using SlideRoom. We encourage you to register for that webinar if you haven't already.
At the culmination of the challenge, we'll be awarding 6 winners. There will be 2 winners per focus area, so 2 winners in the financing focus area, 2 winners in the construction focus area, and 2 winners in the resident services and support focus area. Awards will include $2 million in direct grant assistance and $500,000 in technical assistance. The grant period will span from the execution of the grant agreement in the summer of 2020 through the end of 2022. Ultimately, our vision is to have a final cohort of grantees that represent a spectrum of breakthrough ideas for housing affordability spanning different geographies, market contexts, types of ideas, and sponsors. Before applying to the challenge, please take a moment to review the eligibility requirements. If you're a nonprofit organization with 501c3 status or a tribally designated housing entity, you can apply to any of the 3 focus areas. If you are a for-profit entity, you are only eligible to apply for the construction focus area. Public agencies or jurisdictions are not eligible to apply as lead applicants to the challenge. To clarify, we understand that many applicants are working with partner organizations as collaborators, and that's fantastic. Those partners and collaborators can be nonprofits, for-profits, public agencies, quasi-governmental agencies, etc. But for the financing and resident services and support focus areas, the lead applicant must be a nonprofit 501c3, or a tribally designated housing entity. Before we shift to Q&A, we want to leave you with our suggested next steps if you're interested in applying to the challenge. After today's webinar, we'll circulate the webinar deck to everyone who registered for the challenge so you can take additional time to review it. We recommend looking closely at the opportunity statements and eligibility parameters to make sure your breakthrough idea is a good fit. We encourage you to discuss the opportunity with any current or potential partners involved in executing your breakthrough idea. Stay tuned on January 15th for the release of the RFP and the launch of the Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge website. If you're still interested in applying, we strongly encourage you to join us next week on January 16th for a webinar that will specifically focus on the RFP and the application process. Don't worry if you can't make that webinar. Like this one, it will be recorded. We'll spend some time answering questions in a few moments, but if we don't get to your question and you don't see it in our FAQs, you can always submit additional questions to the following address: housingbreakthrough@enterprisecommunity.org. And with that, let's shift to questions. Brittany, do we have any questions that we can address?
Thanks, Melinda. Yes, we have a lot of questions coming through. So let's go ahead and start with this one. The first one is, can we apply for funds to support an affordable housing project that's already in development?
Take that one? Sure.
Sure. So the question is, can we apply for funds? So can we apply for an award here to support a project that's already happening? It's already in development.
Thanks. And thanks everyone also for including some questions I'm seeing coming through in the chat. I would ask to please make sure that your questions go into the Q&A part of the Zoom webinar so that we can be sure to address those questions once the webinar is over as well. And to answer that question, thank you, Brittany. What we're looking for are innovative and creative ideas that are scalable and can be replicated. So we're not looking at this challenge and these grants to support a one-time development that is currently either under construction or soon to break ground. Rather, we're looking for something that is more solution-based.
So no applications for individual projects, please. Individual real estate transactions.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying that for everybody. The second question we have is, can you go ahead and reiterate who is eligible for each of the focus areas?
Sure. So again, there's 3 focus areas: construction, finance, and resident services, just for shorthand. In finance and resident services, the lead applicant has got to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization or a tribally designated housing entity, shorthand TDHE. If you are one, you probably know what that is, and if you're not, you probably don't. And that's okay. In the construction category, we understand that the logical leadership for some of those submissions is really from the for-profit sector. So that is the one area in which we will be accepting applications from for-profit entities. We are not accepting applications from public entities in any of the 3 categories. And otherwise, I would say if you have specific questions for us about whether or not your agency, your entity is eligible to apply, please submit a question to us at housingbreakthrough@enterprisecommunity.org, and we'd be really glad to take a look at your eligibility directly as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Melinda. The next most common question we're being asked is if an organization is allowed to apply to multiple categories. So if somebody has more than one idea, can they submit multiple ideas to the challenge or just to one category?
Thanks. What we're requiring that applications must fit within one focus area. Not to say that they may not address other areas around affordability, but applications will only be considered for one focus area.
Great, thank you, Christy. The next question we have is, do the funds for the grant need to be spent in its entirety by the end of 2022?
We're certainly looking for ideas that will fully utilize the resources over the term of the program, which is between the summer of 2020 and the end of 2022. We're happy to look at facilities and other sorts of concepts that may leverage and or revolve resources over time, but certainly looking for ideas that will fully utilize those dollars over the initial life of the program if possible.
Perfect, thank you. The next question we have is, could you expand more on how affordable housing is defined in the challenge? So what would be considered affordable or affordable housing?
So for sure, we are prioritizing projects, efforts, initiatives that are looking at 60% of area median income and below as the core population they're serving, because the need is tremendous, of course, at 60% of area median income and below. If you're new to the field of affordable housing and the sort of concept of use of area median income as threshold is new to you, please again send us an email. We'd be glad to send you some information about how to access that information in your region, who else you might talk to, things of that nature. But for folks who work regularly in affordable housing, that concept should resonate. We are not, however, specifically limiting submissions to those that are at 60% and below. For example, folks may have concepts that are more fluid or intended to serve a broader population that is generally at that level, but there may be some households that are over 60% AMA, or how households may grow in area median income over the life of the program. So we're not, it's not a sort of a compliance, something we're gonna have compliance around, but we certainly are looking and will be prioritizing ideas that are at the 60% threshold and below. So hopefully that's helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much for walking us through that. So the next question we have, I'm going to combine two questions that relate to each other, is about the use of the funds. So we have a few questions asking if the grant can be combined with other funding. So the $2 million, if that's granted out, can that be combined? And then are there any restrictions with the funding or the inverse? What are the permissible uses of the funds?
So combining is absolutely fine. Leverage is generally a positive, although not something we're explicitly asking you in great detail about during the first round of the challenge. And the second question about what they can and can't be used for, we're really, and our colleagues at Wells Fargo have really worked to define and create a very flexible program here. So, the resources can be used, for staff, they can be used for program development costs, they can be used for consultants, they can be used for actual program costs, they can be leveraged into financing facilities. We are incredibly flexible in terms of what it takes for the field to innovate. We are very, very, very flexible. If you think you have an idea for how you want to use the resources, that seems like really, really unusual and isn't one of those things that I named, or that you want to run by us, of course we welcome an email to take an early look at it. But for the most part, we have designed this program to be extremely flexible in how you can use the resources, which is one of the things we're so excited about in terms of the opportunity to bring it to the field.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And just a follow-up question to the funds, we're being asked if the funds will be dispersed all at once, or will they be reimbursable?
The funds will not, the full grant amount will be $2 million, and we will not disperse that at one time. when we have selected the winners, we will work with the winners on a disbursement plan for the course of the program over 2 years that is reflective of the pace of their need and our receipt of the funds. And, as you can imagine, it will be, roughly half for the first year and roughly half for the second year, with some flexibility to work with the grantees on what their needs are.
Perfect. Thanks, Melinda. The next question we have is about opportunity zones, and we have a few participants wondering if there'll be any points given or any preference given to projects that are in opportunity zones.
Nope, that's not in our plans. We're certainly open to ideas that are, related to the opportunity zone moment that we're in, but there's no priority there for us.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can an organization apply as a lead and also then also be a support organization for a different application?
Yes. So you'll see when the application becomes public next week that organizations, we ask for one lead to be named for probably obvious administrative purposes, and then we will ask you about who your partners are in the work later in the RFP document that you'll receive next week.
Great, thank you. We have a question. Is there a preference for multifamily versus single family projects and rental versus homeownership, or will all of these be considered equally?
They will all be considered. We're looking for innovation around all different types of housing, whether it be rental or for sale, multifamily, single. We love all of your great ideas.
Awesome, that's perfect. The next question we have is in regards to the technical assistance that will be provided as part of the grant. Could you talk more about examples of what that could look like for the grantees?
Sure. So with each grant, we and our colleagues at Wells feel it's the overall budget that we work on together and to design a technical assistance approach for each innovation. It's going to end up looking really different, we're imagining, for each of the 6 winners. So I won't go into detail around that, but just to say that before we finalize our grant agreements and really start the work of dispersing resources, we'll also really be working to collaborate with each winner to identify what sorts of needs. Those needs can be technical assistance on financing, on models, on communications, on marketing. It could be so many different areas where Wells Fargo and Enterprise can offer support, as well as helping to design support that can be provided by additional organizations externally. So, this is a bit of an amorphous answer, but it really is by design, because we realize that each winner is going to probably have a very different set of technical assistance needs, and that those will vary, and we'll take them one at a time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have a few folks asking if there's any regional or geographic preference for the competition.
There are not. We are entirely open across the country. We are extremely interested in hearing from every part of the country. We're extremely interested in diversity in the pool. So we encourage everyone to apply. Again, urban, rural, tribal, non-tribal, coastal, non-coastal. We are entirely flexible.
Perfect. And I'll just add to that, some folks are asking about the Wells Fargo's locations. And so just to be clear, Melinda, it's totally okay if there's no Wells Fargo's locations where they're applying. It is still open to everybody.
There is no preference. All communities, all parts of the country, as well as Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, are welcome to apply.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have some questions regarding government organizations. Could you clarify again how any cities, states, or local jurisdictions could apply?
They cannot unless they have a C3 entity that they can apply with, which some may. But the lead organization, again, for the finance and resident services category has got to be a nonprofit entity or a tribally designated housing entity, and the lead for construction has got to be a for-profit entity or either of the above public agencies. Without that status, without one of those statuses, are not eligible to apply.
Perfect, thank you. So we have some questions about the specific application, and some folks are wondering if they could have a quick overview of what next week's webinar will look like and what the first step of the RFP will look like. And one question specific to that is a proposed budget required at the first step of the RFP?
We are not requiring a prepared budget in the first round of the RFP. As I mentioned before, it's a fairly brief grant application, I think certainly compared to what some of us might be used to. We just want to hear more about your ideas. We want to understand how your ideas are innovative, how they're creative, how they can be used in, throughout the United States, regionally, locally. How can it be? I've seen some questions come through asking about what do I mean by solution. We want to really find a concept that can be used across urban, rural, tribal, coastal, non-coastal. We want to start finding solutions to address our affordability crisis, not something that's just going to support one project specifically. So the question prompts are going to include, questions that include telling us more about the idea. How can the idea become sustainable? Things like that, as opposed to heavy on the documentation side with budgets and that, things like that. We will be asking for additional documentation in rounds 2 and 3 of the challenge, but round 1, we really wanted to keep it fairly brief to really encourage folks to apply and to put forth their ideas.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Christy. And we're just going to take a few more questions for today, and then we'll post the remainder answers on our website for this. But we have some questions regarding the timeline. If you could just quickly review the dates that everybody should know for the first round of the RFP, that would be great.
Yes, so the RFP will be available on January 15th, and applications are due no later than February 19th. The round 2 applications for the approximately 40 applicants that will be moving forward, that round 2 RFP will be available on March 18th and will be due on April 14th. And then the final round, pitch day, will be in late June, with final winners being notified before July 31st.
Perfect. All right. Well, we were going to wrap up with that. Melinda and Christy, do you have any other closing words you'd like to offer? And for everybody else on the phone, we'll be posting the rest of the answers on our website.
Oh, no, just thank you. We look forward to getting this information back out to you through the deck that we've shared, through updating the FAQs today and moving forward. We've got some questions that we've gotten to and some that we haven't, and we will get through them all. And you're also, of course, welcome to continue to contact us directly, housingbreakthrough@enterprisecommunity.org. Again, please remember that the actual RFP document will be available in about a week. So this was a preview, but know that there'll be much, much more detail available to you about a week from today. So we appreciate and are very excited about the interest, and we look forward to collaborating with many of you in the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Melinda. And thank you all for your time today and for your interest in the challenge. We definitely look forward to reviewing your applications and hearing about your inspiring work that will improve housing affordability for